community colleges themselves need to be quicker to adapt.
Cheryl, it's great to have you with us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure
Welcome
to be
to the
here.
American Enterprise Institute. We're delighted to have you.
Thank you.
You have a lot to say about how to reform education for the needs and aspirations of young people at a time where it's really important.
Right.
There are too many Americans feel sort of stuck in place, feel disconnected from their communities. Some of them feel maybe unneeded or that they don't have the talent or skills to make it in this world. And there's really no better place to start than the kind of education that really gets people a vision of the future, gets them the skills and the abilities and the confidence that they need to move ahead. So I want to talk to you about what you've done as a reformer in this space. But before we do that, I'd really, instead of giving you a formal introduction, I'd like you to just tell us your story, because you have a powerful and unique personal story which is very related to these themes. Yeah. And so why don't we start there? Why don't you tell us about your background and then how it led you to this work?
I came to city colleges from the corporate world. I spent 14 years in the private sector and was a corporate executive before I came to city colleges of Chicago. Many of my colleagues questioned my sanity when I decided to do that. You leave a very successful corporate career to go into the public sector. Well, you have to know it wasn't for the great government benefits that I decided to go into the public sector. It very much was personal for me. I grew up on the west side of Chicago, and in growing up, my life had its share of ups and downs, starts and stops. Parts of my life was very challenging. I've publicly talked about my parents' struggle with substance abuse and my short stint with homelessness and dropping out of high school. I've been very open in talking about that, and I go from that to, being the beneficiary of a great education, which gave me my start in life, which led me to the corporate world. And so having overcome a lot of that, and a lot of those same struggles our students at city colleges were facing, having overcame that gave me this incredible drive and passion to want to help other students overcome those same obstacles in life and ensure that their education was as valuable to them as mine was to me. I believe education is the key to the American dream. And so our institutions have such a responsibility in that. And so it was not a hard decision for me to leave the corporate world to go run city colleges of Chicago. My corporate career fulfilled me professionally, but there was always this personal void. And I believe becoming chancellor of city colleges of Chicago filled that personal void. I quite often tell people, and I mean this, I believe I left a career to take on a calling.
That's great. Yeah, well said. So I want to talk to you a little bit about what you did at the community college, but I should let our viewers know that they can read all about it when you have a book coming out in June 2018 called Reinvention, The Promise and Challenge of Transforming a Community College System. Congratulations on finishing the book.
Thank you.
And I look forward to reading it.
Thank you.
So when you got there, what was the condition of the college and this whole reinvention effort? Talk us through kind of the main components of it.
Right. So I'll tell you at a very high level what my vision and my goal was for city colleges of Chicago. I can take you through a lot of statistics, but I think what I was, and certainly I was trying to change those. The completion rate or the graduation rate was 7%. Our remediation needs were in the upper 90%. And so I can talk to you about a lot of statistics that's not much different than a lot of other community colleges. But what I was trying to change most of all, and what you can't quantify on top of academics, is culture. And having a culture of accountability, having a culture of success. So I had two high-level goals with Reinvention. One was to ensure that our institution was set up in a way where students can come to us and really pursue achieving their dreams both personally and professionally through a quality education. But two, it was about trying to create a culture and shift a paradigm from one that had been historically focused on access to one that was a culture that was now focused on access and student success. And how did I do that? So I tried to create a collaborative effort with both the internal knowledge we had and external experts to define student success. What does student success mean? How do you define that? There is no standard definition of success in the industry. And so I created what I call our student success goals. But on top of that, I wanted those goals to be quantifiable and measurable. It's hard for you to achieve something that you can't really measure. If you're not measuring, you're just doing. And so I wanted to establish quantifiable, measurable goals, build strategies, a long-term strategy around those goals in which we can measure ourselves against, hold people accountable for those goals, and then be transparent about how we were performing with those goals. So, and I felt like all of that would help us establish that institution that would be set up in a way for our students to succeed. But it was about defining student success, being acutely focused on every student succeeding in a timely manner, measuring ourselves, holding ourselves accountable, and then being transparent about how we were performing.
That's great. And so, those are great objectives and goals for the students, but the status quo when you got there was not doing those things. And so what are the two or three things that sort of define the culture that you inherited? Why until you got there had people not had that much of a student-centric focus on outcomes and goals?
I don't think that was unique to City Colleges of Chicago. I think traditionally, as I've said before, historically, community colleges were created around a paradigm of access. It never was created around a paradigm of success and holding ourselves accountable. And so I don't think that was unique to City Colleges of Chicago. You were right. The status quo, that does go against the status quo and challenging the status quo. But I also think, as much as we look at institutional performance, we need to take a deeper look at our governing and regulatory bodies and policies. A lot of policies dictate the culture that we see within our institutions. So you hear a lot of talk today about being more completion focused, being more outcome focused. But are we trying to change policies to reflect the outcomes that we're advocating from our institutions? So I don't think it was unique. I think it's historically how these institutions have been established and the policies that govern these institutions.
That's a great point. Yeah, that's a really good point. And so you've said before that you want to shift the culture in a community college from being degree focused to being career focused. That seems to be related to what you were just saying. What does that practically look like?
So I think that looks like starting with the end in mind. So let me just talk a little bit more about, you mentioned the status quo. I think that the status quo needs to be challenged, and we need to totally rethink both academically and operationally how our institutions are run. When you're dealing with institutions, like many complex institutions, complex entrenched institutions, academia is not quick to act or adapt. And they're very resistant to taking big steps and to taking big bets. But it's those very big steps and big bets that are holding us back. When I spoke on a panel earlier, we talked about pathways, we talked about credits, we talked about credentialing. A lot of systems now get that, and a lot of systems are doing good work around those particular initiatives. My concern is that we're not moving fast enough. We're not moving at the same pace labor markets are moving. So many Americans are trying to grab at their piece of the American dream, and they're grabbing at air right now because we're not adapting quick enough. We're not moving fast enough. But sometimes, as I said before, a lot of this pain is not self-inflicted, because what we'll find is that we're trying to deliver new outcomes in old delivery models around old frameworks. And so when I say we need to be far more career focused, we need to let go of our old habits and our old delivery models and our old frameworks, and look at creating new delivery models, new ways of credentialing, new ways of operating, those that are more reflective of the labor market. And now we're preparing people to go right into a skilled labor force. And so we need to start with the end in mind, get input from employers, and then reverse engineer our programs and our operations back from that. If we don't, someone else will. And if I can, I'll use a bit of a recent example. So if you look at the recent announcement of Amazon and other investors who are now getting ready to enter the healthcare workforce space. So healthcare was an industry that typically innovated around its products, but a little less so around its delivery methods and its cost controls, right? But then here's what happens when you're in a capitalist system. Where there's a need, you will have an entrant to enter the market to try to solve a problem, and they usually do that by disruption of the old traditional ways of doing things. And I think as we think about the labor markets, we hear a lot about automation. We know that a lot of employers are automating now. There's a big debate that they're automating because they can't find a skilled workforce. Some say they're automating because it makes their businesses more efficient. I would say it's a combination of both. Nonetheless, doesn't matter why, we know that it is, and more of it is to come. So are our institutions equipped to help those who enter our institutions remain competitive in a world that is quickly automating? Are our institutions equipped to help our current workforce feel less disruption from that automation? I would say we're not. And I would also warn that if somehow we believe academia is exempt from the same kind of disruption as healthcare, then we're living in denial. And that's what I mean. Yeah,
very good. That's great. And let's talk a little bit about this changing nature of sort of the economy right now. I mean, there's a lot of people fretting about it, the automation that you talked about for very understandable reasons. Technological change, new work arrangements.
That's right.
How are there limits to what a community college can actually do to move fast enough in your terms, given some of the policy constraints that you said? I mean, is it inevitable that some third-party disruptors are going to come in just because the policy environment at some point makes it too hard to change, or should we be more hopeful?
I think community colleges have the ability to be far more flexible and nimble, more so than other institutions within higher education. However, again, if our policy doesn't catch up to what our world reflects, they will have a problem. But also, community colleges themselves need to be quicker to adapt. And they need to take the big steps and the big bets. They have to stop trying to deliver new results within old delivery models and old frameworks. Do they have the capability? Yes. Do they have the will to do it? I'm not so sure. I quite often got criticized by some who said that I was moving too fast. And as much as I tried to build a collaborative effort, the world, particularly our students, don't have time for us to build consensus on everything. We have to make decisions and we have to move because the world is moving. So can community colleges do it? They certainly have the ability. Will they do it? I'm not so sure. But if they don't, I'm for sure someone else will.
Is there a role for employers here? From your experience of working with employers, I mean, should employers be more aggressive in the demands that they're making of the partners at the community college level?
I think employers have a huge responsibility. They have a huge responsibility to inform our educational institutions on what they need and what they're looking for. I found in my work that they were very receptive to that. They thought we were a breath of fresh air when we created a new infrastructure around having them being more integrated into our system so that they could have a continuous way to constantly inform us. I think employees have good metrics on the skills that they're looking for, but it's up to the community colleges to turn that into a one-for-one curriculum or program for the students. So I think employers have a huge responsibility, but they have to have the infrastructure and they have to have the means by which to communicate, interact with our community college systems, and our community college systems have to create those new models for them to operate in.
Let's talk about the students for a second. I remember touring a community college campus, not yours, with the president of the campus some years ago, and I was just asking about the sort of appalling graduation rates and completion rates, and his response to me was, well, life happens. You have to understand, for our population, life happens, and that was sort of the end of the discussion. You worked on a very student-centric, student outcomes-focused model that you spoke about a few minutes ago. What sorts of interventions did you do? What sorts of interventions did the college do to help people stay engaged, be able to deal with life when it happens so that they could make it across the finish line?
So let me first say this. As someone who has truly walked in the shoes of our students, we have to be very careful not to let our students' struggles become an excuse for allowing them to fail. I am a perfect example of that. But having said that, you give students structure and ongoing proactive supports, they thrive. They do complete. But community colleges were not necessarily set up that way. Community colleges were set up in a way where it's kind of a la carte. Come in, pick your choice, and put the pieces all together yourself. Well, they just get lost inside of our walls. Not to mention, very few, as you have just noted, complete, and the few that do complete, they don't see any true economic payoff when they do. So if they don't get lost, they get discouraged. So yeah, life happens, but we don't have to fail while life happens. Life happened to me, and it still happens to me. But our students have determination, they have grit, they have all of that. They have showed up at our doors. So that says something. They come to us for help. We should be structured in a way that helps them seamlessly navigate our system in a timely manner down a relevant path that pays off for them economically.
Great. So you've hinted at what it really takes to be a successful leader of a community college, or I could say we can infer it from things that you've said. Yeah. But your advice to a future class of leaders of institutions like you've led, what are the 3 or 4 sort of you can't compromise about them attributes and qualities that we need in the leaders of the future of these institutions?
Yeah, so I would very simply say we do need transformative leaders who have a cross-sector of skills. We have to be very open to non-traditional skill sets, number one. So a lot of times, particularly in academia, leaders have typically come up through the ranks. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, because those are the experts who understand the institutions and the students that we serve. But now the world is calling for us to operate quite differently. So you need people who understand change management. You need people who understand operations. You need a different sort of skill set now. And so typically that skill set hasn't been embraced in academia. So you really need a different skill set. But for me, in addition to having a team that was incredibly smart, many who had, similar skills, non-traditional skills like mine, very creative team. I had a few golden rules for recruiting my own leadership team, and I share these rules with leaders as I talk to them. I always tried to hire people smarter than me. If I was the smartest person in the room, that was a problem. And so hire people who know something you don't, particularly when you're entering an industry that's new to you. And that's something I tried to do. I tried to hire people who would challenge me. So I think there's no secret to anybody. I have a very strong and passionate personality. I needed people who were not intimidated by that and who could challenge me. So I had to be honest about who I was and what my strengths and what my weaknesses are, and then hire people who complement you. So, I know that, with my personality, I need someone who could take a softer approach in more critical situations or call me in if you need somebody to fire up the crowd. And so that's the right mix of both skill sets that I think leaders should look for. It certainly has helped me, but in academia, I would say we certainly need to embrace a new cadre of leadership styles.
That's great advice. Last question is advice you'd give to younger people. As a father of teenagers and also a former college professor, I can say that there is a mood. There is a mood out there right now of 18-year-olds that they're just not sure that this country or the economy that they're going to enter into is going to give them the benefits that their parents said that they had.
Exactly.
When you're talking to a young person or one of your former students there at the college who's 18 to 20, they're looking at the future and they say, what do I have to do to succeed in life? What's your life advice for them?
So there's a few things I tell them. One is always arm themselves with information. I think we as professionals spend a lot of time studying the labor market, looking at data analytics, studying trends, looking at how the job sectors are changing, but we don't encourage our young people to do enough of that. Even if our institutions are not informed enough, if we can arm our students with the right information, they can at least make the right choices for themselves. And so I always try to encourage them to stay informed some kind of way, and then make your choices based on the information and that you have. Another thing I tell them is work hard. And if that doesn't work, work harder. Just keep working. 3, I tell them life will always throw you curveballs. Students would see me and hear my story and go, oh, Chancellor, how did you make it? You've overcome so much. And what I had to remind them is I did overcome a lot, but every day I'm still overcoming something else. Life doesn't stop throwing you curveballs, but what matters is that you keep running towards the finish line. And then lastly, I tell them, let nobody, no person, or no special interest steal their future, to keep going.
That's great. Cheryl Hyman, it's great talking with
Thank
you.
you.
I really appreciate you being here with us today.
Thank
and good
you.
luck with the book, Reinvention.
Thank you so much.
We all look forward to buying it and reading it and learning from it.
I appreciate that.
Thanks
Thank
again.
you.
Hey everyone, that's the end of our discussion with Cheryl Hyman. Thanks for watching. As always, let us know what other topics you'd like AEI scholars to cover on Viewpoint. And to learn more about Cheryl's book, Reinvention, check the links in the description below.